The radio crackled with static at 28,000 feet above the Nevada desert, breaking the morning silence that had settled over the restricted airspace like a shroud. Major Kira, Phoenix, Volkov adjusted her oxygen mask and scanned the endless blue expanse ahead, her gloved fingers steady on the controls of the aging F-16 Fighting Falcon beneath her. The aircraft felt like an extension of her body after 15 years of flying, every vibration, every subtle shift in the controls as familiar as her own heartbeat. But something was wrong. The mission briefing had been deliberately vague, almost insultingly so. Routine training flight, they'd called it. Standard patrol protocols. Yet here she was, alone in airspace that should have been empty, with her radio tuned to frequencies that hadn't been used in classified operations for over a decade. The brass had given her coordinates that led nowhere on any official map, and a flight plan that made no tactical sense. Behind her, barely visible in the morning haze, two F-15 Eagles maintained perfect formation at a respectful distance. She'd noticed them 15 minutes ago, their twin-engine silhouettes unmistakable against the pale desert sky. They weren't supposed to be there. More troubling, they weren't responding to her radio calls. The F-15s had been shadowing her since she'd crossed into the restricted zone, matching her every turn, every altitude adjustment with precision that spoke of veteran pilots at the controls. These weren't training flights or routine patrols. The Eagles flew with the deliberate patience of hunters, their radar systems undoubtedly painting her aircraft in perfect detail, weapons systems ready but not locked. Kira had seen this before in another desert in another lifetime. The way they positioned themselves, high into her six, ready to dive or climb based on her next move, it was textbook intercept formation. But intercept what? She was flying alone, unarmed, in a fighter jet that most pilots considered obsolete. The desert stretched endlessly below, a canvas of brown and gold broken only by the occasional mountain ridge that cast long shadows in the early light. Her fuel gauge showed 70%, plenty for the return flight to Nellie's, but not enough for whatever game was being played in these empty skis. The radio remained silent except for the steady hiss of static, and Kira found herself wondering if this was how legends were born, not in the heat of battle or the glory of victory, but in the quiet moments before anyone understood what they were witnessing. She'd spent her entire career being underestimated, dismissed, and overlooked. Today felt different. Today felt like the beginning of something that would change everything. The F-15s maintained their distance, shadows against the sky, waiting for her to make the first move in a dance whose steps she didn't yet understand. But she would learn. She always did. Captain Jake Razor, Morrison's hands tensed on the flight controls as he studied the lone F-16 ahead through his HUD display. 15 years of combat flying had taught him to read aircraft like others read faces, and something about this pilot's movements bothered him. The single-engine fighter maintained perfect altitude and heading, no wasted motion, no amateur mistakes, professional, confident, maybe too confident. His wingman, Lieutenant Colonel Alex Viper Rodriguez, flew in perfect formation off his right wing, the twin tails of their F-15C Eagles cutting sharp lines against the morning sky. Both aircraft bristled with the latest avionics and weapon systems, their radar arrays capable of tracking dozens of targets simultaneously. Against a single, aging F-16, they represented overwhelming superiority. "Ghost lead, this is Razor," Morrison transmitted on their private channel. "Target maintains course and speed. No response to standard frequencies." The voice that answered came from somewhere high above, invisible among the thin clouds. "Razor, Ghost lead. Maintain surveillance. Do not engage unless target deviates from prescribed flight path." Morrison frowned behind his oxygen mask. Ghost lead, whoever that was, had been coordinating this intercept from the beginning, but something about the whole operation felt off. Standard intercept protocols called for identification and escort procedures. Instead, They were running silent observation on a single fighter that posed no apparent threat. Ghost lead, request clarification on row, Rodriguez transmitted. Target appears to be running some kind of training pattern. Negative Viper, observe and report. That pilot is flying something we need to understand. The F-16 ahead suddenly began a subtle course change, banking left with precision that made Morrison reassess his initial evaluation. This wasn't just professional flying, it was artistry. The turn rate, the angle of attack, the way the fighter seemed to slice through the air with minimal energy loss. He'd seen good pilots, great pilots, but this was different. Jesus, Rodriguez muttered over the comm. Did you see that turn? She's pulling GS that should be impossible in that configuration. Morrison's blood chilled. She. How did Rodriguez know the pilot's gender? The F-16 was too far away for visual identification, and their intelligence briefing hadn't mentioned anything about the pilot's identity. But something in the way Rodriguez said it, with certainty rather than assumption, suggested he knew something Morrison didn't. Viper, explain your source on pilot identification, Morrison demanded. A long pause filled the radio. When Rodriguez spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made Morrison's stomach tighten. Razor, you need to look at the way she's flying. That's not just any F-16 pilot. Look at her formation discipline, the way she holds altitude without drift. I've only seen one pilot fly with that kind of precision. The desert air seemed to grow thinner as Morrison studied the fighter ahead with new eyes. The subtle perfection of every maneuver, the economic use of control inputs, the absolute mastery of the aircraft, it all pointed to someone with skills far beyond normal training parameters. Who? Morrison asked, though part of him already suspected the answer would change everything about this mission. Phoenix, Rodriguez whispered, and the call sign hung in the air between them like a prayer or a curse. Major Kira Volkov felt the familiar weight of scrutiny pressing against her shoulders as she maintained course through the restricted airspace. The F-15s behind her had shifted position 3 times in the past 10 minutes, small adjustments that spoke of pilots trying to get a better read on her capabilities. She'd been letting them, flying straight and level, giving them time to form their initial impressions. Now it was time to show them what they were really dealing with. Her fingers found the radio controls, switching to a frequency she hadn't used in years. Emergency tactical channel, monitored by every military installation within a 100-mile radius. When she spoke, her voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd learned to command respect in rooms full of men who'd never wanted her there. Any stations monitoring guard, this is Phoenix with a courtesy announcement. I am conducting advanced tactical maneuvers in restricted airspace. Recommend all observers maintain safe separation distance. The response came immediately, crackling with barely controlled excitement. Phoenix, this is Ghost Lead. Confirm your identity and current mission parameters. Kira smiled behind her oxygen mask. Ghost Lead. She recognized the voice, Colonel Marcus Steele Patterson, though he'd been a major when they'd last flown together. The man who'd recommended her for dismissal from the program that had ultimately made her the pilot she was today. Ghost Lead Phoenix. Mission parameters classified at your level. Suggest you observe and learn. The radio fell silent, and Kira could almost feel the shock radiating from the invisible observer somewhere above. In the old days, speaking to a colonel that way would have meant the end of her career. But she wasn't the same pilot who'd been quietly transferred out of the elite programs. She'd learned things in the years since, developed skills that existed beyond the traditional chain of command. The F-16 began to bank right, and Kira let her muscle memory take over. The maneuver she was about to execute had been classified for 15 years, part of a program that officially didn't exist. But here, in empty sky above the desert, with pilots who needed to understand what they were witnessing, she was finally free to show what Phoenix really meant. The fighter rolled inverted and pulled into a vertical climb that should have stalled the engine. Instead, the F-16 seemed to dance upward, defying physics with a grace that spoke of modifications hidden deep within its airframe. At 35,000 feet, she rolled level and looked down at the F-15s below, knowing they were scrambling to understand what they'd just witnessed. Her radio crackled with urgent chatter as the Eagles tried to match her climb rate and failed. The desert spread out beneath her like a brown canvas, and for the first time in years, Kira felt like she was exactly where she belonged. "Ghost lead," she transmitted, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Perhaps we should discuss those mission parameters after all." Captain Morrison's F-15 shuddered as he pushed the throttles to full military power, trying desperately to match the impossible climb rate of the F-16 above. The Eagle was designed to outclimb anything in the sky, its twin engines capable of producing over 25,000 pounds of thrust each. Yet somehow, the single-engine fighter ahead was pulling away from them as if they were standing still. "How the hell is she doing that?" Rodriguez panted over the comm, his own aircraft straining to maintain the pursuit. Morrison's eyes were locked on his HUD, watching the F-16's energy signature with growing disbelief. The aircraft was operating outside normal performance parameters, not just beyond what an F-16 should be capable of, but beyond what physics should allow. The climb angle was too steep, the engine performance too strong, the structural stresses too great for any conventional fighter. "Ghost lead, Razor," Morrison transmitted, his voice tight with concentration. "Target has exceeded normal flight envelope. Request immediate clarification on aircraft configuration and pilot authority." The response from high above carried a weight that made Morrison's blood run cold. "Razor, Ghost lead. You are observing a classified technology demonstration. Maintain surveillance and document all maneuvers for post-flight analysis." Technology demonstration. The words hit Morrison like a physical blow. This wasn't about intercepting a rogue pilot or conducting routine training. They were witnessing something that existed in the gray spaces between official programs and classified research, technology that pushed the boundaries of what aircraft could accomplish. At 40,000 feet, the F-16 rolled level again and began a series of maneuvers that defied everything Morrison thought he knew about flight dynamics. The fighter moved through the thin air with impossible precision, executing turns that should have torn the wings off and recovering from dives that should have exceeded structural limits. "She's not just flying it," Rodriguez observed, his voice filled with something between admiration and fear. "She's making it do things it was never designed to do." Morrison found himself studying every movement, every control input, trying to understand the relationship between pilot and machine he was witnessing. This wasn't just superior training or advanced technology. It was something more fundamental, a fusion of human skill and mechanical capability that created possibilities neither could achieve alone. The morning sun painted the F-16's canopy gold as it rolled into another impossible maneuver, and Morrison realized he was watching the future of air combat. Not just new weapons or faster engines, but a completely different understanding of what it meant to fly. "Phoenix," he transmitted on the emergency frequency, abandoning protocol. "This is Razor. We'd like permission to observe your full demonstration." The response came with a warmth that surprised him. "Razor, Phoenix, form up on my wing. Let me show you what 15 years of development looks like." As the F-15s moved to join the impossible fighter above, Morrison felt the weight of history settling around them like the desert air, thin, clear, and infinite with possibility. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez felt his F-15 respond sluggishly as he tried to match the F-16's flight path. The Eagle was a magnificent machine, tested and proven in combat across multiple decades, but watching Phoenix fly made him question everything he thought he knew about air superiority. Her aircraft moved through three-dimensional space with a fluid grace that suggested complete mastery, not just of aerodynamics, but of forces that conventional training barely acknowledged. "Phoenix Viper," he transmitted, settling his eagle into formation off her starboard wing. "Request permission to observe your maneuvering parameters. What we're seeing appears to be outside normal flight envelope limitations." The response came with a hint of amusement that somehow made it through the crackling radio static. "Viper, Phoenix, what you're seeing is what happens when you stop accepting limitations as permanent fixtures." Rodriguez studied the F-16 from his position 50 feet away. At this distance, he could see details that had been invisible during the intercept. The aircraft's skin showed subtle modifications, panels that didn't quite match standard configurations, sensors mounted in locations that suggested capabilities beyond normal radar and communications. This wasn't just an upgraded F-16. It was something that had evolved beyond its original design. "Ghost lead, Viper," Rodriguez transmitted on their command frequency. "Recommend we get a full technical team to observe this demonstration. What we're witnessing has significant tactical implications." Colonel Patterson's voice carried a tension that spoke of larger forces at work. "Negative, Viper. This demonstration is compartmented at levels above your clearance. Observe, document, report through classified channels only." The words hit Rodriguez like a cold wind. Compartmented programs meant budgets buried in black projects, technology that existed in spaces between official acknowledgement and operational necessity. He'd heard rumors of such programs, aircraft that pushed beyond conventional limits, pilots trained to capabilities that redefined human potential. But seeing it unfold in the clear desert air made the implications terrifyingly real. Phoenix began a descending spiral that should have induced G-forces capable of causing unconsciousness in most pilots. Instead, she maintained perfect control throughout the maneuver, her aircraft responding to inputs with precision that suggested either superhuman reflexes or technology that anticipated and compensated for human limitations. "Jesus Christ," Morrison's voice crackled over their formation frequency. "She's pulling 8 GS and talking like she's sitting in a chair." Rodriguez checked his own G-meter and felt his stomach drop. His F-15 was pulling only 4 GS in the same maneuver, and he was already feeling the familiar gray creep at the edges of his vision. How was she maintaining consciousness, let alone perfect control, under forces that should have incapacitated her? "Phoenix," he transmitted, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the physical stress. "How are you maintaining cognitive function under those G-loads?" Her response came without a trace of strain. "Viper, let's just say that 15 years of development applies to more than just aircraft systems." The implication sent a chill through Rodriguez that had nothing to do with the thin air at altitude. Enhanced pilots, modified human performance, technology that bridged the gap between man and machine in ways that redefined both. Colonel Marcus Patterson watched the formation from 45,000 feet, his modified F-22 Raptor invisible to the radars below, thanks to stealth technology that remained classified years after its development. The Raptor's advanced sensors painted a complete picture of the demonstration unfolding in the airspace below, and what he saw confirmed his worst fears and greatest hopes simultaneously. Phoenix was exceeding every performance prediction they'd made when the program began 15 years ago. The modifications to her F-16 were working beyond design specifications, and more troubling, her own enhanced capabilities were pushing the boundaries of what they'd thought possible for human pilots. "Control, Ghost lead," Patterson transmitted on a frequency that connected directly to a bunker buried beneath the Nevada desert. "Phoenix demonstration exceeding all baseline parameters. Recommend immediate escalation to program director level." The voice that responded carried the weight of authority that stretched back to the earliest days of military aviation research. Ghost Lead, Control, Program Director is observing via satellite link. Continue demonstration and maintain security protocols. Patterson felt the familiar weight of responsibility that came with knowing things that could reshape the future of air combat. The Phoenix program had been his idea originally, taking the most gifted pilots and pushing them beyond conventional limitations through technology that existed in the gray spaces between science and speculation. Kira Volkov had been the perfect test case. Brilliant, determined, and most importantly, dismissed by enough of her superiors that her disappearance from normal career tracks went unnoticed. They'd spent years developing her capabilities, modifying her aircraft, and preparing for the day when everything would come together in a demonstration that would either validate 15 years of classified research or prove that some boundaries were meant to remain unbroken. Below him, Phoenix rolled into a maneuver that made his breath catch. The F-16 seemed to pause in midair, defying momentum and inertia in ways that suggested technology far beyond conventional understanding. For 3 seconds, the fighter hung motionless at 38,000 feet, then accelerated in a direction that had nothing to do with where it had been pointing. "Control, Ghost Lead," Patterson transmitted, his voice tight with excitement and fear. "Phoenix just executed a vector change that appears to violate conservation of momentum. Recommend we move to Phase 2 of the demonstration." The pause that followed lasted long enough for Patterson to wonder if he'd crossed a line that existed somewhere in the classified depths of military protocol. When the response came, it carried implications that would echo through the halls of power for decades to come. "Ghost Lead Control, Phase 2 authorized. Show them what Phoenix can really do." Patterson switched to the emergency frequency and felt history pivot around his words. "Phoenix, Ghost Lead, you are cleared for full demonstration. Show our observers what 15 years of development looks like when unlimited resources meet unlimited determination." The response came with a joy that had been absent from military communication since the early days of flight testing. "Ghost Lead, Phoenix. Finally. Razor, Viper, you might want to give me some room. This next part gets interesting." Major Morrison felt his F-15 shudder as Phoenix's F-16 began maneuvers that challenged everything he understood about the physics of flight. The single-engine fighter ahead wasn't just exceeding normal performance parameters. It was operating according to principles that seemed to exist outside conventional aerodynamics entirely. "Viper, are you getting this on your recording systems?" Morrison transmitted, his eyes locked on instruments that were struggling to track movements too rapid and precise for normal sensor capabilities. "Affirmative, Razor, but I'm not sure anyone is going to believe what we're recording," Rodriguez replied, his voice tight with concentration. "She just pulled a 90-degree vector change at Mach 1.2. The G-forces should have turned her into paste." Morrison watched his HUD struggle to maintain a lock on Phoenix's aircraft as she moved through a series of maneuvers that defied explanation. The F-16 rolled, climbed, dove, and turned with precision that spoke of technology integrated at levels far beyond normal human-machine interface. This wasn't just advanced training or superior equipment. It was something that bridged the gap between possible and impossible. "Phoenix, Razor," Morrison transmitted. "Request clarification on your aircraft modifications. What we're observing appears to exceed standard F-16 capabilities by orders of magnitude." The response came with warmth that somehow made it through the technical challenges of high-altitude radio communication. "Razor, let's just say that when you stop accepting manufacturer limitations as absolute truth, interesting possibilities emerge." Morrison found himself studying every detail of the demonstration, with the intensity of someone who understood that he was witnessing the future of air combat. The F-16's movements suggested not just upgraded engines or improved control systems, but a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to fly. Technology that allowed pilot and aircraft to function as an integrated system rather than human operating machine. At 42,000 feet, Phoenix began a maneuver that made Morrison's blood run cold. The F-16 rolled inverted and appeared to stop in midair, its nose pointing straight down while its forward momentum continued horizontally. For 5 seconds, the aircraft existed in a state that violated every principle of aerodynamics Morrison had ever learned. Then it rotated 90 degrees around its vertical axis and accelerated in a direction that had nothing to do with where it had been moving. "Jesus Christ," Morrison whispered, forgetting to release his transmit button. "That's not flying, that's something else entirely." Phoenix's response carried an understanding that spoke of years spent pushing beyond the boundaries of what others considered possible. "Razor, flying was just the starting point. What you're seeing is what happens when human potential meets technology designed to transcend rather than simply enhance." Morrison felt the weight of revelation settling around him like the thin air at altitude. This wasn't just about better aircraft or superior training. He was witnessing the emergence of capabilities that would redefine air warfare, space exploration, and human potential itself. "Phoenix," he transmitted, his voice carrying the respect of one professional addressing another. "We're honored to observe your demonstration. What you're showing us will change everything." The response came with gratitude and something deeper, the satisfaction of finally being understood. Rodriguez felt his worldview reshaping itself as Phoenix demonstrated maneuvers that existed beyond conventional understanding of flight dynamics. Each impossible turn, each physics-defying acceleration, each moment of seeming weightlessness added another piece to a puzzle that redefined what he thought he knew about the relationship between human capability and technological potential. "Control, Viper," he transmitted on the command frequency. "Recommend we establish new baseline parameters for evaluating air combat capabilities. What we're observing suggests current threat assessment models may be fundamentally inadequate." The response came from Colonel Patterson high above, carrying implications that extended far beyond the demonstration they were witnessing. "Viper, Control, your observation is noted and will be forwarded to appropriate analysis teams. Continue documentation and prepare for post-flight debriefing at classification levels above your current clearance." Above your current clearance. The words sent a chill through Rodriguez that had nothing to do with the thin air at 40,000 feet. He'd held top-secret clearance for over a decade, had been briefed on programs that pushed the boundaries of acknowledged military capability. If Phoenix's demonstration required clearances above his level, the implications reached into areas of development that existed in the deepest shadows of military research. Phoenix rolled into another impossible maneuver, her F-16 seeming to pause at the apex of a vertical climb before rotating around its center of gravity in defiance of inertia and momentum. The aircraft hung in space like a hummingbird, then shot forward with acceleration that should have exceeded human tolerance levels. "Phoenix Viper," Rodriguez transmitted. "How are you maintaining consciousness during these maneuvers? The G-forces should be beyond human tolerance." Her response carried a complexity that suggested layers of development he was only beginning to understand. "Viper, human tolerance is another one of those manufacturer limitations that becomes negotiable with proper technology integration." Technology integration. The phrase hung in the air between them like a revelation wrapped in technical terminology. Rodriguez had heard rumors of programs that pushed beyond conventional enhancement of human performance, research that blurred the lines between man and machine, between biological limitation and technological transcendence. But seeing it demonstrated in the clear desert air made the implications terrifyingly beautiful. Phoenix, Morrison's voice crackled over their formation frequency. Are you saying that your capabilities have been enhanced? The pause that followed lasted long enough for Rodriguez to contemplate the full implications of the question. Enhanced pilots, modified human performance, technology that integrated with human consciousness at levels that redefined the boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence. Razor, Phoenix replied, her voice carrying 15 years of development compressed into careful words. I'm saying that human potential is far greater than most people realize, especially when it's supported by technology designed to reveal rather than simply amplify existing capabilities. Rodriguez felt the future of warfare, exploration, and human development shifting around him like the desert wind, invisible but undeniably real. What he was witnessing wasn't just an advanced aircraft demonstration. It was the emergence of possibilities that would reshape civilization itself. Colonel Patterson maintained his invisible vigil from the stratosphere, his F-22's sensors recording every aspect of Phoenix's demonstration for analysis that would continue long after the aircraft returned to their respective bases. The data flowing through his systems painted a picture of human and technological integration that exceeded every projection the program had generated over 15 years of classified development. Control, Ghost Lead, Patterson transmitted. Phoenix is exceeding all performance baselines. Recommend we move to final demonstration phase before fuel considerations become limiting factors. The voice that responded carried the authority of decisions that would echo through military planning for generations to come. Ghost Lead, Control, Final Phase authorized. Show them what Phoenix represents for the future of aerospace capability. Patterson switched to the emergency frequency and prepared to witness something that would either validate 15 years of classified research or demonstrate that some boundaries were meant to remain unbroken. Phoenix, Ghost Lead, you are cleared for final demonstration. Show our observers what the next generation of aerospace capability looks like. The response came with excitement that had been building for 15 years. Ghost Lead, Phoenix. Finally, Razor, Viper, you might want to climb to maximum altitude. This demonstration operates in 3 dimensions. Patterson watched his instruments as Phoenix's F-16 began climbing toward them with acceleration that defied rational explanation. The aircraft's energy signature suggested power systems operating beyond conventional fuel-burning engines, thrust generation that hinted at technologies developed in the deepest levels of classified research. At 48,000 feet, Phoenix's aircraft seemed to pause, hanging motionless in the thin air while her escort struggled to match her altitude. Then, in a maneuver that would be analyzed and debated by aerospace engineers for decades, the F-16 began to rotate around its vertical axis while maintaining perfect position in 3-dimensional space. Jesus Christ, Morrison's voice crackled with static and awe. She's spinning like a top without losing altitude or position. How is that even possible? Patterson found himself watching the demonstration with the fascination of someone who had helped create something that exceeded even his wildest expectations. The Phoenix program had been designed to push beyond conventional limitations, but what Kira was demonstrating suggested capabilities that reached into realms of physics and human potential that remained theoretical even in classified research circles. Control, Ghost Lead, Patterson transmitted, his voice tight with implications that would reshape military doctrine. Phoenix final demonstration confirms all theoretical projections. Recommend immediate escalation to National Command Authority level. The pause that followed carried the weight of decisions that would influence the balance of power for generations to come. When the response came, it carried implications that extended far beyond military applications. Ghost Lead, Control, National Command Authority is already observing via classified satellite systems. Phoenix program is authorized for Phase 3 development. Begin recruitment and training protocols for expanded pilot integration. Patterson felt history pivoting around them like the desert wind, invisible but undeniably powerful. What they were witnessing wasn't just the demonstration of advanced technology. It was the beginning of a new era in human capability. Major Kira, Phoenix. Volkov felt the familiar sensation of transcendence as her consciousness merged completely with her aircraft systems. 15 years of development had led to this moment, the full demonstration of what human potential looked like when supported by technology designed to reveal rather than simply amplify existing capabilities. The F-16 beneath her had ceased to be a separate machine and become instead an extension of her will, responding to thoughts rather than control inputs, anticipating her intentions before she fully formed them. The integration between pilot and aircraft had reached levels that existed beyond conventional understanding of human-machine interface. "Razor, Viper," she transmitted, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone operating at the peak of human and technological capability. "What you're about to witness represents 15 years of development in aerospace integration. The maneuvers I'm going to demonstrate exist beyond current flight envelope limitations because they operate according to principles that transcend conventional aerodynamics." At 50,000 feet, Phoenix began the final sequence of her demonstration. The F-16 moved through three-dimensional space with precision that spoke of consciousness extended beyond biological boundaries, technology that amplified human awareness to encompass forces and possibilities that remained invisible to unenhanced perception. The first maneuver defied gravity itself. Phoenix's aircraft rose vertically for 3,000 feet while rotating around its longitudinal axis, then transitioned seamlessly into horizontal flight without any apparent energy transition. The movement suggested propulsion systems that operated according to principles beyond conventional reaction-based thrust. "Phoenix Razor," Morrison transmitted, his voice tight with awe and disbelief. "Your aircraft appears to be operating outside known physics. Are you using some form of exotic propulsion?" Her response carried 15 years of classified research compressed into careful words. "Razor, exotic is a relative term. What I'm using represents the practical application of principles that have existed in theoretical physics for decades. The challenge was never understanding the science. It was developing technology capable of implementing it at practical scales." The second maneuver challenged the observer's understanding of structural limitations. Phoenix rolled her F-16 through a series of accelerations that should have exceeded material strength by orders of magnitude. Yet the aircraft held together, responding to forces that would have torn conventional fighters apart. "Control, Phoenix," she transmitted on the command frequency. "Demonstrating maximum structural integration. Aircraft systems are operating at 100% of enhanced capability." Enhanced capability. The phrase hung in the thin air like a bridge between what was and what was becoming possible. Phoenix had become something beyond conventional pilot classification, a fusion of human consciousness and technological capability that represented the future of aerospace development. As she prepared for the final demonstration, Phoenix felt the weight of 15 years of preparation settling around her like the infinite sky above the desert. Everything had led to this moment. Every hour of training, every technological breakthrough, every challenge overcome. She was no longer just Major Kira Volkov. She had become Phoenix, a symbol of transformation, rebirth, and the endless potential that emerged when human determination met unlimited technological possibility. The demonstration reached its crescendo as Phoenix executed maneuvers that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional flight dynamics. Her F-16 seemed to dance through three-dimensional space with a grace that suggested complete transcendence of physical limitations. Technology and consciousness merged into something greater than the sum of their individual capabilities. Rodriguez watched his instruments struggle to track movements that challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying aerospace engineering. The F-16 ahead wasn't just flying. It was demonstrating possibilities that would reshape humanity's understanding of transportation, exploration, and the relationship between consciousness and technology. "Phoenix Viper," he transmitted, his voice carrying the awe of someone witnessing the future unfold in real time. "What you're demonstrating represents more than advanced aircraft capability. This suggests breakthrough in our understanding of physics itself." Her response came with the warmth of someone sharing a revelation 15 years in the making. "Viper, physics hasn't changed. Our understanding of what's possible within those physical laws has evolved. What you're seeing is what happens when human consciousness is supported by technology designed to reveal rather than restrict potential." At 52,000 feet, Phoenix began a maneuver that would be studied and analyzed by aerospace engineers for decades to come. Her F-16 accelerated to speeds that exceeded conventional capability, then seemed to pause in midair before changing direction 90 degrees without any apparent energy transition. The demonstration suggested propulsion systems that operated according to principles beyond conventional reaction-based thrust, structural materials that exceeded known strength limitations, and human-machine integration that transcended traditional boundaries between pilot and aircraft. "Control, Viper," Rodriguez transmitted on the command frequency. "Recommend immediate initiation of research programs to understand and potentially replicate observed capabilities. What we're witnessing has strategic implications that extend beyond air superiority into fundamental questions of technological development." Colonel Patterson's response carried the weight of decisions already made in classified planning sessions. "Viper, control. Research and development programs are already in advanced stages. Phoenix represents the first operational demonstration of capabilities that will reshape aerospace development for generations to come." As Phoenix completed her final maneuver, a spiraling descent that seemed to defy gravitational acceleration, Rodriguez felt the weight of history settling around them like the thin air at altitude. They weren't just witnessing an advanced aircraft demonstration. They were present at the birth of a new era in human capability. The implications reached beyond military applications into questions of exploration, transportation, and the ultimate boundaries of human potential. What Phoenix had demonstrated suggested that those boundaries were far more negotiable than anyone had previously imagined. "Phoenix," Rodriguez transmitted as the demonstration concluded, "we're honored to have witnessed this. What you've shown us will change everything." Her response carried 15 years of preparation and the quiet satisfaction of finally being understood. "Viper, changing everything was always the point. The question now is what we do with these capabilities." The morning sun painted the desert gold as Phoenix's F-16 leveled off at normal flight parameters, but the implications of what they'd witnessed would echo through the halls of military planning for generations to come. As the formation began its descent toward Nellis Air Force Base, Morrison found himself processing the implications of what he'd witnessed with the methodical approach of someone whose worldview had been fundamentally altered. The Phoenix demonstration hadn't just shown advanced technology. It had revealed possibilities that reached into the deepest questions of human potential and technological development. "Phoenix Razor," Morrison transmitted as they established approach parameters. "Request permission to ask about pilot selection criteria for your program. What we've witnessed suggests requirements beyond conventional flight training." Her response carried the complexity of 15 years spent pushing beyond accepted limitations. "Razor, selection criteria evolved as we better understood what was possible. Initially, we looked for exceptional pilots. Eventually, we realized we needed people willing to become something beyond conventional pilot classification. Beyond conventional pilot classification. The phrase hung in Morrison's mind like a key to understanding implications that extended far beyond military aviation. Phoenix hadn't just demonstrated advanced aircraft capability. She had shown what human consciousness looked like when supported by technology designed to transcend rather than simply enhance existing limitations. Phoenix, Rodriguez joined the conversation. Are you saying that your capabilities represent permanent enhancement, or are they dependent on your aircraft systems? The pause that followed carried the weight of questions that touched on fundamental issues of human identity and technological integration. Viper, that's like asking whether a person's ability to think depends on their brain or their consciousness. The integration reaches levels where the distinction becomes meaningless. Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with altitude or air temperature. Permanent integration between human consciousness and technological capability. Enhancement that transcended conventional boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence. The implications reached beyond military applications into questions that would reshape civilization itself. As they approached Nelly's, Morrison could see the massive complex of runways and hangars that represented decades of aerospace development. But what they'd witnessed in the desert air suggested that traditional approaches to flight testing and development were about to become historical footnotes in the story of human technological evolution. Control Razor, Morrison transmitted on the base frequency. Formation of 3 requesting landing clearance. Priority classification to be determined by ground authority. The response came with efficiency that suggested preparations had been made for their arrival. Razor, Control, you are cleared for landing on runway 21 left. Ground crews with appropriate clearance levels are standing by. As the 3 aircraft touched down on the desert runway, Morrison realized that the morning's demonstration had been more than just a test flight. It had been his introduction to a future where the boundaries between human capability and technological possibility had been permanently redefined. The implications of what Phoenix had shown them would echo through military planning, aerospace development, and human understanding for generations to come. The post-flight debriefing took place in a facility that Morrison had never seen despite 15 years of flying out of Nelly's. The building existed in the classified depths of the base, reached through corridors that required clearance levels he'd only heard rumors about. The conference room itself was a marvel of secure communication technology, designed to contain conversations that could reshape the balance of global power. Phoenix sat across from him with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. Her flight suit bore no rank insignia Morrison recognized, no unit patches that corresponded to official organizational charts. She had become something beyond conventional military classification, a bridge between what was and what was becoming possible. Colonel Patterson entered with the measured stride of someone carrying the weight of classified decisions. Behind him came a woman in civilian clothes, whose presence seemed to command immediate respect from everyone in the room. She introduced herself simply as Dr. Sarah Chen, Program Director, but Morrison sensed authority that reached into the highest levels of government oversight. "Gentlemen," Dr. Chen began, her voice carrying the precision of someone accustomed to briefing national leadership. "What you witnessed this morning represents 15 years of classified research into the boundaries of human and technological capability. The Phoenix program has achieved integration between consciousness and advanced aerospace technology that exceeds our most optimistic projections." Morrison found himself studying Phoenix with new eyes. The woman across from him wasn't just an exceptional pilot. She was the living embodiment of research that pushed beyond conventional understanding of human potential. Every movement, every gesture suggested consciousness that operated at expanded levels of awareness and capability. "Dr. Chen," Rodriguez interjected. What are the strategic implications of what we observed? The capabilities Phoenix demonstrated suggest advantages that could fundamentally alter the balance of air superiority. Her response carried implications that reached far beyond military applications. Colonel Rodriguez, what Phoenix represents is the first step toward capabilities that will reshape not just air combat, but human exploration of space, our understanding of consciousness itself, and the ultimate boundaries of what we can achieve as a species. Morrison felt the weight of revelation settling around him like the classified air in the secure briefing room. They weren't just discussing advanced military technology. They were witnessing the emergence of possibilities that would define the next stage of human evolution. Phoenix, Morrison addressed her directly, how do you experience the integration between your consciousness and your aircraft systems? What does that level of technological merger feel like? Her response came with the warmth of someone sharing something deeply personal, yet universally significant. Razor, imagine if your ability to think wasn't limited to your biological brain, but could extend into systems designed to amplify and enhance every aspect of cognitive capability. That's not a metaphor. It's a literal description of what consciousness becomes when properly supported by appropriate technology. The implications hung in the secure air between them like promises of a future that was simultaneously inspiring and terrifying. Dr. Chen leaned forward with the intensity of someone preparing to share information that would change everything Morrison thought he knew about military development. Her eyes held the focused clarity of a scientist who had spent decades pushing beyond theoretical limitations into practical application. Major Morrison, Colonel Rodriguez, what you witnessed this morning is just the beginning, she said, her words carrying the weight of classified programs that stretch back to the earliest days of aerospace research. The Phoenix program represents our first successful integration of advanced consciousness enhancement with breakthrough propulsion technology, but it's part of a larger initiative that will reshape every aspect of human capability. She activated a holographic display that filled the air above the conference table with technical diagrams that seemed to exist at the intersection of neuroscience, quantum physics, and advanced materials engineering. The images showed human neural networks interfaced with technological systems in ways that suggested complete merger between organic and artificial intelligence. The human brain, Dr. Chen continued, has always been limited by biological constraints, processing speed, memory capacity, sensory input limitations. But those constraints become negotiable when consciousness is supported by systems designed to amplify rather than simply interface with human capability. Morrison studied the displays with growing amazement and concern. The technical specifications suggested enhancement that went beyond anything he'd imagined possible. Human consciousness, expanded to encompass technological capabilities that operated according to principles beyond conventional understanding. Dr. Chen, he asked carefully, what are the selection criteria for this level of enhancement? What does it take to become what Phoenix has become? Phoenix answered before Dr. Chen could respond, her voice carrying 15 years of transformation compressed into thoughtful words. Razor, it requires willingness to let go of conventional definitions of human limitation. The technology exists. It has existed for years. The challenge is finding people prepared to transcend traditional boundaries between self and system. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Are we talking about permanent alteration of human consciousness, changes that can't be reversed? Dr. Chen's response carried implications that reached into fundamental questions of human identity and technological development. Colonel Rodriguez, we're talking about evolution, permanent in the sense that once consciousness expands to encompass enhanced capabilities, returning to previous limitations becomes not just difficult, but meaningless. Morrison felt the future of human development shifting around him like desert wind, invisible but undeniably powerful. What Phoenix represented wasn't just advanced military capability. It was the emergence of possibilities that would reshape civilization itself. Dr. Chen, Morrison said slowly, you're describing the next stage of human evolution. Her smile carried 15 years of classified research and unlimited faith in human potential. Major Morrison, that's exactly what we're describing. The weight of implication settled over the briefing room like the classified silence that surrounded programs beyond normal understanding. Colonel Patterson had remained silent throughout the initial briefing, but now he leaned forward with the measured authority of someone who had overseen the development from its earliest theoretical stages. His eyes held the intensity of a military officer who understood that what they were discussing would influence the balance of global power for generations to come. Morrison, Rodriguez, Patterson said, his voice carrying the weight of classified decisions that reached into the highest levels of national security planning. What you witnessed this morning has strategic implications that extend far beyond advanced aircraft capability. The Phoenix program represents breakthrough in human enhancement that gives us advantages our potential adversaries can't match. He activated additional displays that showed global aerospace development timelines, highlighting programs in other nations that were attempting to achieve similar capabilities through conventional technological approaches. The comparison was stark. While other countries focused on faster engines and better weapons systems, the Phoenix program had taken the revolutionary step of enhancing human capability itself. Our intelligence indicates that several nation-states have programs attempting to replicate what they believe to be advanced propulsion technology, Patterson continued. They're focusing on the wrong variables. What makes Phoenix unstoppable isn't just her aircraft. It's the integration between enhanced human consciousness and technology designed to support that enhancement. Morrison studied the intelligence summaries with growing understanding of the strategic landscape they were operating within. The Phoenix demonstration hadn't just been a test flight. It had been a message to potential adversaries that American aerospace capability had transcended conventional limitations. Colonel Patterson, Rodriguez asked, what are the deployment timelines for expanded Phoenix capability? How quickly can we field additional enhanced pilots? Patterson's response carried the complexity of development programs that operated beyond normal acquisition timelines. The Phoenix program has been carefully managed to ensure that enhanced capabilities develop at sustainable rates. We're not just building better pilots, we're pioneering the future of human consciousness itself. Phoenix spoke for the first time since the technical briefings began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived through every stage of the development process. Deployment isn't just about training additional pilots. Each integration between consciousness and technology is unique, requiring individualized development programs that can take years to complete. Dr. Chen nodded in agreement. What Phoenix achieved today represents 5 years of consciousness integration following 10 years of foundational enhancement. The process can't be rushed without risking psychological integrity and technological compatibility. Morrison felt the weight of time scales that extended far beyond normal military planning horizons. The Phoenix program wasn't just about immediate tactical advantage. It was about positioning human capability for challenges that might not emerge for decades. Dr. Chen, Morrison said thoughtfully, you're describing development that transcends normal program timelines. This is generational change. Her response carried the vision of someone who had dedicated her career to possibilities that existed beyond conventional limitations. Major Morrison, some advances require thinking beyond conventional timelines. What we're developing will influence human capability for centuries to come. The morning sun streaming through the briefing rooms secured windows painted everything in gold. But the implications of what they were discussing would cast shadows and light across human development for generations beyond counting. The conversation shifted to operational considerations, as Dr. Chen activated displays showing deployment scenarios that stretched across multiple decades of strategic planning. The Phoenix program wasn't just about current military advantage. It was about preparing human capability for challenges that might emerge from developments in space exploration, artificial intelligence, and geopolitical competition at scales that transcended conventional conflict. The integration Phoenix has achieved, Dr. Chen explained, represents just the first generation of consciousness enhancement. Second-generation capabilities are already in development, with projected capabilities that exceed what you witnessed this morning by orders of magnitude. Morrison felt his understanding of military development timelines expanding to encompass possibilities that reached beyond anything he'd previously imagined. Second-generation enhancement suggested capabilities that would make even Phoenix's demonstration seem primitive by comparison. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez asked, what do second-generation capabilities look like? What's possible beyond what we observe today? Her response carried implications that seemed to belong more to science fiction than classified military briefings. Second-generation integration expands consciousness beyond individual aircraft into network-based awareness that encompasses entire battle spaces. Enhanced pilots become nodes in distributed intelligence systems that can coordinate actions across multiple domains simultaneously. Phoenix leaned forward with excitement that suggested someone who had participated in the early stages of second-generation development. Imagine consciousness that isn't limited to individual perspective, but can perceive and analyze tactical situations from multiple viewpoints simultaneously. That's not theoretical. It's already in early testing phases. Morrison tried to process implications that seemed to exist at the intersection of human enhancement and artificial intelligence development. Network-based consciousness suggested capabilities that transcended individual human limitation through technological integration that expanded awareness itself. Are we talking about shared consciousness? Morrison asked carefully. Enhanced pilots operating as part of integrated cognitive networks. Dr. Chen's response carried the precision of someone describing capabilities that existed at the cutting edge of human and technological development. We're talking about consciousness that operates at scales appropriate for the challenges we'll face in space exploration, advanced artificial intelligence interaction, and defense against threats that might emerge from technological developments we can barely imagine today. The implications were staggering. Enhanced pilots operating as nodes in cognitive networks that could coordinate actions across entire continents, process information at scales that exceeded individual human capability, and respond to threats with speed and precision that transcended biological limitations. Dr. Chen, Morrison said slowly, you're describing capabilities that would fundamentally alter the nature of human consciousness itself. Her smile carried 15 years of research and unlimited faith in human adaptability. Major Morrison, human consciousness has always been more adaptable than most people realize. What we're doing is revealing potential that has always existed, just waiting for appropriate technological support to manifest. As the briefing continued into detailed technical specifications and deployment timelines, Morrison realized that the morning's demonstration had been his introduction to a future where the boundaries between human capability and technological possibility would be permanently redefined. The afternoon briefing sessions delved into technical specifications that existed at the intersection of classified aerospace development and consciousness research that pushed beyond conventional understanding of human cognitive capability. Dr. Chen presented data that showed the Phoenix program's achievements in context of larger research initiatives, spanning decades of investigation into the fundamental nature of human potential. The breakthrough that made Phoenix possible, Dr. Chen explained, wasn't just technological, it was conceptual. We had to abandon conventional assumptions about the boundaries between human consciousness and technological capability. The displays showed neural interface technologies that allowed consciousness to extend beyond biological boundaries into systems designed to amplify and enhance every aspect of cognitive function. The integration wasn't just about faster reflexes or better situational awareness. It was about consciousness that operated at scales and speeds that transcended individual human limitation. Phoenix, Dr. Chen said, turning to address her directly, would you describe the subjective experience of consciousness integration for our observers? Phoenix considered the question with the thoughtfulness of someone trying to explain something that existed beyond normal human experience. It's like the difference between seeing the world through a single window versus having windows in every direction, including dimensions you didn't know existed. The integration doesn't replace human consciousness. It reveals that human consciousness was always capable of more than we realized. Morrison found himself struggling to process implications that seemed to exist at the boundaries of what he could conceptually understand. Enhanced consciousness that operated beyond individual limitation, awareness that encompassed capabilities he couldn't fully imagine, technology that revealed rather than simply augmented human potential. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez asked, what are the long-term implications of this level of consciousness enhancement? How does this change human development over generational time scales? Her response carried the vision of someone who had dedicated her career to possibilities that extended far beyond conventional research horizons. Colonel Rodriguez, we're pioneering capabilities that will influence human development for centuries to come. What Phoenix represents is the first step toward consciousness that can operate at scales appropriate for challenges we'll face as we expand into space, develop advanced artificial intelligence, and encounter possibilities we can barely imagine today. The weight of generational implication settled over the briefing room like the classified silence that surrounded programs whose success would influence the trajectory of human civilization itself. They weren't just discussing military advantage. They were witnessing the emergence of capabilities that would reshape what it meant to be human. Phoenix, Morrison addressed her directly, do you still feel human? Has the integration changed your fundamental sense of identity? Her response came with warmth that bridged the gap between enhanced capability and essential humanity. Razor, I feel more human than ever before. The integration doesn't diminish humanity. It reveals that human potential is far greater than most people realize. I'm still the same person who wanted to push beyond limitations. Now I have the tools to do it. The afternoon sun painted the briefing room in changing patterns of light and shadow, but the implications of what they were discussing would illuminate human development for generations beyond counting. As evening approached, the briefing shifted to practical considerations of program expansion and the selection criteria for additional pilots who might be suitable for consciousness enhancement. Dr. Chen presented psychological profiles and capability assessments that painted a picture of human potential waiting to be revealed through appropriate technological integration. The selection process for Phoenix-level enhancement, Dr. Chen explained, requires candidates who demonstrate not just exceptional flying ability, but psychological flexibility that allows consciousness to adapt to expanded capabilities without losing essential human characteristics. The displays showed assessment criteria that went far beyond conventional pilot evaluation. Cognitive adaptability, psychological resilience, and most importantly, willingness to transcend traditional definitions of human limitation while maintaining core personality traits that defined individual identity. Dr. Chen, Morrison asked, what percentage of exceptional pilots would be suitable candidates for this level of enhancement? Her response carried the precision of someone who had overseen selection processes for years. Less than 1% of exceptional pilots demonstrate the psychological characteristics necessary for successful consciousness integration. The technology exists to enhance anyone, but the human element requires very specific personality traits. Phoenix added her perspective with the authority of someone who had lived through every stage of the selection and development process. The technology amplifies what's already there. If someone has limitations in judgment, decision-making, or emotional regulation, the enhancement magnifies those limitations along with everything else. The selection process is as much about psychological stability as cognitive capability. Morrison found himself wondering about his own suitability for such enhancement, then realized that the question itself revealed whether he possessed the psychological characteristics necessary for consideration. The willingness to contemplate transcendence of conventional limitation was itself a qualification criteria. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez asked, assuming suitable candidates could be identified, what are the timelines for additional program expansion? Her response carried implications that reached far beyond immediate military planning horizons. Current development timelines project 3 additional Phoenix-level pilots within the next 5 years, with second-generation capabilities available for testing within the decade. But expansion is limited by more than just technological considerations. We're pioneering capabilities that require careful management to ensure psychological and social integration. The implications were staggering. Phoenix wasn't just a unique individual. She was the prototype for human development that would ultimately influence the entire species. Enhanced consciousness supported by advanced technology, revealing potential that had always existed but had never been properly supported. Dr. Chen, Morrison said thoughtfully, you're describing the beginning of a new stage in human evolution. Her smile carried 15 years of research and unlimited confidence in human adaptability. Major Morrison, evolution was always the goal. We're just providing appropriate technological support for capabilities that were waiting to emerge. As the briefing concluded with classified documentation procedures and security protocols, Morrison realized that the morning's demonstration had changed not just his understanding of aerospace capability, but his perception of human potential itself. The evening debriefing sessions focused on the strategic implications of Phoenix program capabilities in context of global aerospace development and potential applications beyond military aviation. Colonel Patterson presented intelligence assessments that showed how enhanced consciousness capabilities would influence everything from space exploration to advanced artificial intelligence development. The Phoenix demonstration this morning, Patterson explained, represents technological breakthrough that positions American aerospace capability decades ahead of potential competitors. But the strategic advantage extends beyond military applications into fundamental questions of human development and technological integration. The displays showed comparative analyses of international aerospace programs, highlighting the conventional approaches other nations were pursuing in contrast to the revolutionary consciousness enhancement that made Phoenix possible. The gap wasn't just technological, it was conceptual. Our intelligence indicates, Patterson continued, that several major powers are investing heavily in advanced propulsion systems and artificial intelligence development, believing these represent the next generation of aerospace advantage. They're focusing on the wrong variables entirely. Morrison studied the intelligence summaries with growing appreciation for the strategic thinking that had guided Phoenix program development. While other countries pursued incremental improvements in conventional technology, American research had taken the revolutionary step of enhancing human capability itself. Colonel Patterson, Rodriguez asked, what are the deployment considerations for Phoenix-level capabilities? How do we integrate enhanced pilots into conventional military structure? Patterson's response carried the complexity of strategic planning that operated beyond normal military organizational frameworks. Enhanced pilots operate beyond conventional command structures. Phoenix doesn't fit into traditional squadron organizations because her capabilities transcend conventional tactical frameworks. Phoenix spoke with the authority of someone who had experienced the challenges of integration between enhanced capability and existing military culture. Integration requires new organizational approaches that can accommodate capabilities that operate at scales beyond conventional planning parameters. I don't just fly missions. I operate in domains that didn't exist before consciousness enhancement became possible. Dr. Chen added technical perspective that illuminated the broader implications of what they were discussing. Phoenix represents the emergence of capabilities that will ultimately require new institutions, new training methodologies, and new approaches to human development that extend far beyond military applications. Morrison found himself contemplating organizational structures that could accommodate human capability, enhanced to levels that transcended conventional understanding. Military institutions designed around individual human limitation would need fundamental restructuring to integrate consciousness that operated at expanded scales. Dr. Chen, Morrison asked, what do organizational frameworks look like when human capability is enhanced to Phoenix levels? Her response carried implications that reached beyond military structure into questions of social organization and human interaction at scales that didn't yet exist. Major Morrison, we're pioneering organizational approaches that can accommodate consciousness, enhanced beyond individual limitation. The institutional changes will be as revolutionary as the technological capabilities themselves. As night fell over the Nevada desert, the implications of what they had discussed seemed to expand like the infinite stars above. Unlimited potential waiting to be revealed through appropriate understanding and technological support. The final briefing sessions extended well into the night, as Dr. Chen presented long-term development projections that stretched across decades of consciousness enhancement research and technological integration. The Phoenix program existed within a larger framework of human development that would ultimately influence the entire trajectory of civilization. What you witnessed this morning, Dr. Chen explained as holographic displays filled the secure briefing room with timelines that extended far beyond conventional planning horizons, represents just the initial demonstration of capabilities that will reshape human potential across multiple generations. The projections showed development phases that reached from current Phoenix-level enhancement through second-generation network consciousness integration, third-generation capabilities that would allow human consciousness to operate at planetary scales, and theoretical fourth-generation development that pushed beyond current understanding entirely. Dr. Chen, Morrison asked carefully, are we looking at capabilities that will fundamentally alter human civilization itself? Her response carried the vision of someone who had dedicated her career to possibilities that existed at the intersection of science, technology, and human potential. Major Morrison, human civilization has always been shaped by breakthrough in capability and understanding. What makes the Phoenix program unique is that we're enhancing human capability directly rather than simply developing better tools. Phoenix leaned forward with excitement that suggested someone who had experienced glimpses of development phases beyond current implementation. The consciousness integration I've achieved represents just the beginning. Second-generation capabilities that are already in testing allow awareness that encompasses multiple domains simultaneously: air, space, information systems, even interaction with advanced artificial intelligence at scales that transcend individual human capability. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably as he contemplated implications that seemed to exist at the boundaries of what he could conceptually process. Are we talking about human consciousness that operates beyond individual identity, enhanced awareness that transcends personal limitation. Dr. Chen's response carried precision that illuminated technical capabilities without fully revealing classified development details. Colonel Rodriguez, we're talking about consciousness that retains individual identity while gaining access to capabilities that operate at scales appropriate for challenges humanity will face as we expand beyond Earth. Develop artificial intelligence that exceeds human cognitive speed, and encounter possibilities we can barely imagine today. The weight of generational implication settled over the briefing room like the desert night outside, vast, clear, and infinite with possibility. What they were discussing wasn't just military development. It was the emergence of human capability that would influence the entire future of the species. Phoenix, Morrison asked, what does it feel like to be at the leading edge of human evolution? Her response came with humility that bridged enhanced capability and essential humanity. Razor, it feels like responsibility. What I represent isn't just personal achievement. It's the beginning of possibilities that will ultimately be available to anyone willing to transcend conventional definitions of limitation. As the briefing concluded with classification procedures and long-term security protocols, Morrison realized that his understanding of human potential had been permanently expanded to encompass possibilities he had never imagined. The transportation back to conventional quarters took place in vehicles equipped with security systems that ensured conversations about classified programs remained contained within appropriate channels. Morrison found himself riding in contemplative silence, processing implications that would influence his entire perspective on military service and human development. Phoenix sat across from him with the calm presence of someone who had spent years adapting to capabilities that existed beyond conventional understanding. Her manner suggested someone who had successfully integrated enhanced consciousness with essential human characteristics, technically transcendent but recognizably, warmly human. Phoenix, Morrison said carefully, can I ask a personal question about the integration process? What was the most challenging aspect of consciousness enhancement? Her response came with thoughtfulness that revealed someone who had given careful consideration to questions about identity and technological integration. The most challenging part wasn't adapting to expanded capabilities. It was learning to maintain essential human characteristics while gaining access to awareness that operates at scales beyond individual limitation. Morrison studied her with growing appreciation for the complexity of what she had achieved. Enhanced consciousness that operated beyond normal human capability while retaining the fundamental personality traits that defined individual identity. Technical transcendence that remained recognizably human. Did you ever doubt whether the integration was worth the risks? Rodriguez asked from his position near the vehicle's advanced communication systems. Phoenix considered the question with the perspective of someone who had lived through every stage of transformation from conventional pilot to enhanced consciousness. There were moments during the development process when I wondered whether I was losing essential aspects of myself. But the integration revealed that human consciousness is far more adaptable and resilient than most people realize. The vehicle moved through the Nevada night with the quiet efficiency of transportation, designed to contain classified conversations. Outside, the desert landscape stretched endlessly under stars that seemed to reflect the infinite potential they had been discussing throughout the day. Phoenix, Morrison asked, what would you tell someone who was considering consciousness enhancement? What should they understand about the process? Her response carried the wisdom of someone who had successfully navigated transformation that pushed beyond conventional understanding of human limitation. I would tell them that the technology reveals rather than replaces human potential. The integration amplifies what's already there: intelligence, judgment, courage, compassion. If someone has fundamental limitations in those areas, the enhancement will magnify the limitations along with everything else. Morrison found himself contemplating his own psychological characteristics and wondering whether he possessed the fundamental traits necessary for successful consciousness integration. The question itself seemed to be part of the evaluation process, willingness to honestly assess personal capabilities and limitations. Dr. Chen mentioned that less than 1% of exceptional pilots demonstrate suitable characteristics for enhancement, Rodriguez observed. What makes the difference? Phoenix smiled with warmth that bridged technical capability and essential humanity. The difference is willingness to transcend conventional definitions of limitation while maintaining the core characteristics that make someone uniquely human. The technology is just the support system. The real achievement is consciousness that can operate at expanded scales without losing individual identity. As they approached their temporary quarters, Morrison realized that the day's experiences had permanently altered his understanding of human potential and technological possibility. The next morning brought new briefings that focused on the practical implications of Phoenix program development for conventional military operations, and the integration challenges that would arise as enhanced consciousness capabilities became operational across broader military frameworks. Colonel Patterson opened the session with strategic assessments that placed Phoenix capabilities in context of global military balance and the long-term implications for American aerospace dominance. The enhanced consciousness that Phoenix had demonstrated represented advantages that would influence military planning for decades to come. The Phoenix program, Patterson explained, provides capabilities that our potential adversaries cannot replicate through conventional technological development. While other nations focus on faster aircraft and more advanced weapon systems, we have achieved breakthrough in human capability itself. The morning briefings included technical demonstrations that showed how Phoenix-level consciousness integration could coordinate actions across multiple domains simultaneously: air operations, space-based systems, information warfare, and interaction with artificial intelligence at speeds that exceeded conventional human capability. Morrison watched displays that showed tactical scenarios where single enhanced pilots could coordinate complex operations across entire theaters of conflict, processing information and making decisions at scales that would require teams of conventional operators. The implications for military efficiency and operational capability were staggering. Dr. Chen, Morrison asked, what are the training requirements for conventional pilots who would work alongside enhanced consciousness capabilities? How do we integrate normal human limitation with transcendent capability? Her response carried implications that reached beyond immediate training considerations into fundamental questions of military organization and human adaptation. Major Morrison, integration requires new training methodologies that help conventional pilots understand and support capabilities that operate beyond their direct experience. It's not just technical training, it's preparing human consciousness to interface with enhanced capability. Phoenix added perspective from someone who had experienced both sides of the integration process. Working with enhanced consciousness requires conventional pilots to expand their understanding of what's possible while maintaining their essential human characteristics. The technology supports rather than replaces human judgment and decision-making. Rodriguez leaned forward with questions that seemed to arise from careful consideration of operational implications. Phoenix, how do you coordinate with conventional pilots during complex operations? How do you bridge the gap between enhanced and normal capability? Her response revealed someone who had given significant thought to practical applications of consciousness enhancement in real-world scenarios. Coordination requires communication that operates at multiple levels simultaneously, conventional radio protocols for standard procedures, but also intuitive awareness that allows enhanced consciousness to anticipate and support conventional capabilities. The morning sun streaming through the briefing room, windows painted everything in golden light. but the implications of what they were discussing would cast long shadows across military development for generations to come. Morrison found himself contemplating career implications as the briefings continued with detailed assessments of how Phoenix program capabilities would influence aerospace development timelines and strategic planning frameworks that stretched across decades of technological advancement. The afternoon sessions focused on classification protocols and security considerations that would govern the gradual integration of enhanced consciousness capabilities into operational military frameworks. Dr. Chen presented guidelines that balanced the need for operational security with the recognition that Phoenix program development would ultimately influence military culture at fundamental levels. The challenge, Dr. Chen explained, isn't just protecting classified technology, it's managing the social and cultural implications of human capability enhanced beyond conventional limitation. Phoenix represents possibilities that will ultimately reshape military institutions themselves. The classification procedures were unlike anything Morrison had encountered in 15 years of military service. Multiple levels of compartmented access, security clearances that extended beyond traditional frameworks, and psychological evaluation protocols designed to ensure that knowledge of enhanced consciousness capabilities wouldn't destabilize personnel who weren't prepared for such information. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez asked, what are the timelines for broader program disclosure? When do enhanced consciousness capabilities become operational knowledge across conventional military frameworks? Her response carried the complexity of strategic planning that balanced immediate security needs with long-term integration requirements. Colonel Rodriguez, program disclosure will occur gradually as enhanced capabilities demonstrate operational value and as military institutions adapt to accommodate consciousness that operates beyond conventional limitation. Phoenix spoke with authority that came from years of existing at the intersection of classified capability and operational necessity. Integration isn't just about revealing technology, it's about preparing military culture to accommodate human potential enhanced beyond traditional understanding. That process requires careful management to ensure successful adaptation. Morrison found himself wondering about his own role in the gradual integration process. The briefings had revealed possibilities that would influence his entire approach to military service and human development, but the practical implications remained unclear. Dr. Chen, Morrison asked, what opportunities exist for continued involvement with Phoenix program development? What roles are available for pilots who demonstrate understanding of enhanced consciousness capabilities? Her response carried implications that suggested possibilities Morrison hadn't considered. Major Morrison, the Phoenix program requires support personnel who understand enhanced consciousness capabilities while maintaining conventional pilot skills. Integration between enhanced and normal capability requires individuals who can bridge both domains. As the afternoon briefings concluded with detailed security protocols and ongoing classification requirements, Morrison realized that his career had reached a pivotal moment that would determine his involvement with the future of human development. The final evening brought personal conversations that moved beyond classified briefings into individual reflection on the implications of what they had witnessed and learned over the past 2 days. Phoenix joined Morrison and Rodriguez for dinner in quarters that provided security for continued discussion of consciousness enhancement and human potential. "Can I ask you something personal?" Morrison said as they settled into comfortable chairs overlooking the Nevada desert. "Do you ever miss being conventional? Do you regret the integration that made you Phoenix?" Her response came with warmth and honesty that revealed someone who had given deep consideration to questions of identity and transformation. "Razor, I miss some aspects of conventional limitation. There was a simplicity to operating within normal human capability that had its own beauty. but the integration revealed potential that I never knew existed. I can't imagine choosing to return to previous limitations." Rodriguez leaned forward with curiosity that seemed to arise from personal consideration of enhancement possibilities. "What would you tell someone who was considering consciousness integration? What should they understand about the process?" Phoenix considered the question with the thoughtfulness of someone whose answer might influence another person's fundamental life direction. "I would tell them that the integration reveals rather than replaces who they are. If someone has limitations in judgment, compassion, or integrity, the enhancement amplifies those limitations along with everything else. The technology is just support for human potential that was always there." Morrison found himself contemplating his own psychological characteristics and wondering whether he possessed the fundamental traits necessary for successful consciousness enhancement. The question seemed to be part of the evaluation process itself, honest self-assessment that revealed readiness for transformation that pushed beyond conventional understanding. "Phoenix," Morrison asked carefully, "if you were selecting candidates for consciousness enhancement, what would you look for? What characteristics predict successful integration?" Her response revealed someone who had given significant thought to the selection criteria that would guide program expansion. "I would look for people who demonstrate exceptional capability while maintaining essential humanity, courage combined with compassion, intelligence tempered by wisdom, ambition balanced by service to something greater than individual achievement." The conversation continued late into the evening as they discussed implications that reached beyond military applications into fundamental questions of human development and the future of consciousness itself. Outside, the desert night stretched endlessly under stars that seemed to reflect infinite potential waiting to be revealed. "Whatever happens next," Rodriguez said as they prepared to return to conventional duties and classified protocols, "today changed everything about how I understand human potential." Phoenix smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had finally been able to share something deeply important. That was always the point. Human potential is far greater than most people realize. It just needs appropriate support to manifest. As Morrison returned to his quarters, he realized that the Phoenix demonstration had been more than just an introduction to advanced military capability. It had been his first glimpse of possibilities that would ultimately reshape civilization itself. The following morning brought return flights to conventional assignments and the challenge of integrating extraordinary experiences into normal military routines. Morrison found himself processing implications that would influence his entire approach to aerospace development and human potential, while maintaining the security protocols that governed classified knowledge. The flight back to his home base took place in conventional aircraft that felt strangely primitive after witnessing Phoenix's demonstration of consciousness-enhanced capability. Standard F-15 systems seemed limited and clumsy compared to the seamless integration between human awareness and technological possibility he had observed in the Nevada desert. During the flight, Morrison found himself contemplating career directions that hadn't existed before his encounter with Phoenix program capabilities. The briefings had revealed development opportunities that extended far beyond conventional pilot advancement into roles that would help pioneer the future of human consciousness itself. Rodriguez flew formation off his wing with the professional precision that had always characterized their partnership, but Morrison sensed that both of them had been permanently changed by what they had witnessed. The Phoenix demonstration had revealed possibilities that would influence their understanding of military service and human development for the rest of their careers. "Razor," Rodriguez transmitted over their private frequency, "are you going to submit paperwork for Phoenix program consideration?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge between conventional limitation and transcendent possibility. Morrison realized that he had been contemplating exactly that decision, since the moment Phoenix had demonstrated capabilities that existed beyond normal human understanding. "I'm thinking about it," Morrison replied carefully. "What about you?" Rodriguez's response came with excitement and uncertainty that reflected the complexity of contemplating consciousness enhancement that would fundamentally alter individual identity. "Part of me is terrified by the implications, but another part realizes that this might represent the most important human development in history." As they approached their home base, Morrison felt the weight of decision settling around him like the familiar feel of aircraft controls. The Phoenix program represented opportunities that extended beyond conventional military advancement into participation in the next stage of human evolution itself. The landing pattern brought them over familiar terrain that looked different somehow after their encounter, with possibilities that transcended conventional limitation. Normal base operations seemed to occur at slower speeds and smaller scales compared to the expanded consciousness capabilities they had witnessed. "Razor Viper, welcome back." The tower transmitted with routine efficiency that contrasted sharply with the classified complexity of their recent experiences. As Morrison taxied to the flight line, he realized that returning to conventional duties would require careful balance between classified knowledge and normal military operations. The Phoenix program had revealed possibilities that would influence his entire perspective while remaining hidden from most of his colleagues and superiors. The post-flight procedures took place with the routine efficiency of normal military operations, but Morrison found himself processing equipment and documentation with new awareness of how conventional systems fit into larger frameworks of human and technological development. The weeks following the Phoenix demonstration brought gradual integration of extraordinary experiences into conventional military routines, and the challenge of maintaining classification protocols, while processing implications that extended far beyond normal training or operational experience. Morrison found himself approaching routine flights with expanded awareness of possibility, studying aircraft performance and human limitation with new understanding of how conventional boundaries might be transcended through appropriate technological support. Every training mission became an opportunity to explore the edges of what might be possible within current systems. His performance evaluations reflected subtle improvements in situational awareness, decision-making speed, and coordination with other pilots that his commanders attributed to advanced training rather than exposure to consciousness enhancement possibilities. The Phoenix program had influenced his capabilities even without direct technological integration. Rodriguez reported similar experiences during their periodic secure conversations about classified experiences they couldn't share with colleagues or superiors. Both found themselves operating at enhanced levels of capability while maintaining the security protocols that governed knowledge of consciousness enhancement programs. "It's like seeing the Matrix," Rodriguez observed during one of their classified discussions. "Once you understand what's possible, conventional limitation becomes a choice rather than an absolute boundary." Morrison nodded in agreement, recognizing that